that I never could have imagined would have led me here to Serifos, Greece, obviously on this retreat. But to give you guys some context before that, how I even was conceived, my parents initially met, God bless them, through something called Landmark Education, Landmark Form, or S training, kind of predated gratitude training and The Secret. It's like a self-help, weekend type of seminar. They were very into it. They volunteered. They met the founder, Warner Earhart. They graduated to the advanced course, and they nurtured their love for helping people through these seminars, through these workshops. So that was a big part of my DNA and my genes that contributed to making me the human being I am today. And as an advocate, I reflected back and thought about this a lot. My father, God bless him, is from New Hyde Park, Long Island in Nassau County, grew up playing the game of lacrosse. And lacrosse was big in the Northeast, but wasn't big in Florida. It wasn't big many years ago. And my father, my godfather, and some dear friends and coaches of mine advocated for the game of lacrosse that by the time I graduated high school, after starting playing in 5th grade, the year after I graduated, it became an FHSAA public school sport, and now it's international game, and my father earned a spot in the Lacrosse Hall of Fame for his advocacy. So that's a big part of my genes, and that's a big part of, and then the last one, which I thought to mention now, my parents in the 70s got introduced to binaural beats and started a side business called Alpha Relaxation, where somehow some sound engineer before the internet and technology created a box, a device that they placed on the heads of, with headphones of PGA golfers before they would go out on tour to help them get into different states, alpha, beta, theta states. So those are part of the genes that are ingrained in my DNA. When Marjorie got to meet them in Rome. But they fortunately, somehow, my mother was living in Kendall in South Miami, my father was living in North Miami, and they were able to meet without a cell phone, internet, or GPS in the 70s. They met, they connected, they got married, and fortunately they made a great decision to move to Coral Springs, Broward County, where I'm very fortunate and proud to be born and raised from. And fast forward, to be honest with you guys, grew up, wasn't a good kid. I would speak out, I would say all the things that all the other kids were thinking and doing, thinking about saying, but didn't want to do because they didn't want to get in trouble. And I would do that, and I would earn myself a lot of trips to the principal's office and detention and suspension. And the vice principals would always say to my parents when they would pick me up, and I know this might resonate with some of you guys or maybe not that have kids, Evan's such a good kid, he has all the potential in the world, he just can't figure it out in school. And in all reality, school just really wasn't for me. I was destined for a different path. Get out of school, work a couple sales jobs, realized sales wasn't for me, AT&T, Verizon, Dish Network, and do a little stint in real estate, which will come into play later. And I find my way into this industry called recruiting. You guys know staffing, headhunting? Learned how to fit a square peg in a round hole. And at this time, when I'm sitting at my desk and on lunch breaks, I started listening to a lot of TED Talks. And I was really getting a lot of motivation and inspiration from these TED Talks. And fortunately, I had a dear friend who, a recurring theme here, saw something in me that I didn't see in myself and took a liking and started mentoring me. And it knew I had this love of TED Talks, so shared this love of TED Talks. And he invited me to something called Creative Mornings, which is a monthly breakfast lecture series mini TED Talk that's very similar to CreativeZen. And that guy, by the way, is Juan right here.
Oh.
And long story short, I go to the first TED Talk. It was a very well-known coffee roaster in Fort Lauderdale. He was a great guy, very dry and boring story. I say, I don't know about this Creative Mornings thing, but I give it a second chance. The second one was great. It was Adam Garfield from Speedy Tab, the guy that invented ordering on your phone with an app. Phenomenal, got acquired by Visa. I go, okay, I really like this. And the third one was a woman by the name of Alexa Rose Carlin, who started the Women's in Power Expo that was in Fort Lauderdale for many years. And she was speaking on the topic of language. And it's not that we speak the language of English, Hebrew, or Spanish. She was preaching, if you speak the language of positivity, you're going to portray positivity. And if you speak the language of negativity, well, obviously your actions and your reactions will be negative. But more so than that, she had a very interesting story. She had autoimmune disease. She developed sepsis, in the coma, 1% chance of living, saw the light, purple elephant, got out of there. She was on a destined path before that, and life took her in a different direction to create the Women in Power Expo and empower me as a man and many other people, and she was really just preaching to be genuine, be authentic, and pursue your passions. And at this time, I really was, this was 2014, 2015, 2016, I was really developing a love for going to cool chef-inspired tapas, farm-to-table restaurants. And this was at the early stages, if you guys remember Foursquare. Like early Yelp. And I would like check in on Facebook and I would post a picture, but I wasn't really like doing anything with it. And I go by my last name. All my friends would say, I love the places that snow stops at. Okay, that's kind of interesting. I meet a woman at a training seminar for a business I was considering getting into, and she tells me on break about something called blogging. Remember, this is 2014. This was like really early stages. She was telling me she was getting watches and like all kind of cool luxury stuff for free and getting paid to write about it, doing this blogging thing. And I'm like, this is kind of cool. Let me make a little mental note of this. Fast forward, I'm doing recruiting. I go to a really cool restaurant in Coral Gables, a Miracle Mile, called Randazzo's. The recruiting company I was with, they dropped $1,500 on lunch. And I say to the owner, who is a former professional bartender, Mark Randazzo, a great guy, I go, hey, I just started a food blog. I'd love to come cover you. I didn't even have a blog posted. But we had, we just dropped a bunch of money. He goes, sure, come, I'll comp your meal. Started the food blog with him and the woman that actually introduced me to blogging. I go, okay, this is kind of a cool thing. And I named it Snow Stops Food Blog to cover all the places that snow stops at. Around this time, I'm considering moving to downtown Fort Lauderdale with some friends, two brothers from Honduras by the way of Memphis that have very interesting stories within themselves. And one of them tells me, we're gonna go to a place that I never heard of called Wynwood. You guys familiar with Wynwood? Yeah. In 2014, very raw, very underground. He goes, we're gonna go see a music show. We're gonna go see this guy at a music show. I had no idea what that meant. I had been out of music for a while, and if you guys know, actually you might know, the guy was Chet Faker, who's from Australia, Nick Murphy, and he was a legendary musician, and there was a music festival called 3 Points, which is art, music, and technology. It's now celebrating its 10th year. It's one of the biggest music festivals. It takes over half of Wynwood. Absolutely phenomenal. But back then, very raw, very underground. I fell in love with the art. This is my first real time to Wynwood. I fall in love with the arts, the culture, the scene. I go, I really want more of this. Fast forward, Art Basel comes around that year. Now I'm following New Times and like some of the arts and culture like publications and newspapers. And I post on Facebook, hey, does anybody want to go to this thing called Art Basel? And nobody responds. And I make on my own and experience this Art Basel thing for the first time, and it absolutely blew my mind. I didn't even make it 2 blocks in Wynwood. There was live art, there was glass blowing, there was music, there was an indoor skate ramp park. It was phenomenal. It was the coolest thing, and if any of you guys remember Wynwood back in the day, it was way different than what's today, but it is what it is. So I fast forward, I moved to downtown Fort Lauderdale with these 2 brothers who were very into culture, and I was finding myself going to Wynwood all the time. I'd never passed the opportunity to go to Wynwood, but Wynwood's 30, 45 minutes down the road. I kept coming back, and with our friends, we would say, we want to have these cool experiences in Broward, in the 954, where I'm very proud to be born and raised from. And fortunately, my dear friend Juan here knew the potential of this house music thing that we were really just couldn't stop exploring enough. And we started doing house music events at my pool on the sun deck in Camden, Las Olas, and we knew, and Juan knew, really, if we would build it, they would come. If we would play the music, people would come out, and we could create these scenes that are international, around the world. House music is one of the largest music genres, changes people's lives, no fights, always good vibes, phenomenal. And so I attend this talk, the Creative Mornings talk, I get this inspiration, and I really realized the house music thing off into itself is probably going to be a tough thing to do in Fort Lauderdale. Let me pivot to arts and culture. So I really became a culture crusader is what I called myself. I was building a lot of relationships with artists. I was covering all the cool things to do in the 954. And then the brothers were from Memphis. Have you guys ever heard of the World Championship Barbecue Festival? It's in Memphis in May, month-long celebration, absolutely phenomenal. Only one of its kind. I go there and I see the impact of something called Choose 901, which was a social movement Started in Memphis to recruit teachers, paramedics, and firefighters who want to live and work in Memphis, give people computer schools, because they had 2 of the 5 worst neighborhoods in the country, unfortunately, North and South Memphis. I come back from this trip supercharged, super inspired, and in the barber's chair in Fat Village before the Art Walk in June of 2016, I start Choose 954, which you can see here. And I started it, very humble beginnings, with a hashtag. Just wanting to show people all the cool things that were going on, and I felt if the people I grew up with knew about these things, it would give them more reasons to come back and choose the 954, because I'm going all throughout Broward County exploring everything I can, not seeing anybody I grew up with in Coral Springs anymore, and I knew that there was a lot of cool stuff. I knew we had all this potential to replicate a similar movement to what was going on in Wynwood and Broward. So fast forward, the woman I met at my second Creative Mornings talk was an attorney, professor, radio host, entrepreneur, phenomenal woman, Natalie Budo, for those of you that know her, and she invites me to a place called the Tower Club at the top of the Regions Bank building in Fort Lauderdale, members only club, most phenomenal views, the whole entire city. She was simulcasting a TED Talk, and it was this woman, Amy Miller, who is one of the top 10 TED Talks of all time. She was a street performer and a musician, and she wanted to give her music away, and people didn't understand it. And she ended up having a massively successful career, selling millions of copies of music just by giving it away, instead of asking people to pay for it. After the talk, old gray hair guy sitting next to me, he goes, and this is a members only club, which used to be very white, very stuffy, and he says, tell me what you do. I go, well, I just left recruiting actually to enter Entrepreneurville. Well, I have this thing called Choose 954, it's like a blog to cover arts and culture. Couldn't care less. And God bless, on the left side of me was a very sharply dressed brother from Trinidad with a dolly mustache, wearing a Zara suit. And he goes, that sounds kind of cool. Let's meet for coffee here at the Tower Club. And he was me 10 years before me, before social media, but he got burnt out because he didn't have a partner to go with him on this journey, and it is quite a fucking journey. And he had gone to art school, came to America to pursue his American dream from Trinidad, taught art in prisons, worked for some of the largest advertising agencies, worked for some of the largest mall companies in the country, and he was an artist, but he would say he liked nice things, so he couldn't be a full-time artist, so he got into advertising and marketing, understandably. Third coffee meeting we have, we're talking about all the things that we don't have in Broward, where he lived as well, and he was very passionate about it, and he had been involved in many levels before I got involved, and I had never done an event before, and I just had this idea, I want to do an event. I want to do a Basel in Broward. And he goes, I always wanted to do Basel in Broward. And you guys know Art Basel, it's the largest art fair in the world, the first week of December, 1 million people come, $1 billion economic impact, proven model, no questions asked, right down the road from us in Broward County. Why can't we have this in Broward? The thing on Las Olas, that street fair, nobody's flying in to go to that. It happens 4 times a year. The guy's been doing it for 30 years. It serves its purpose, but it's not putting us on the map. We wanted to put Fort Lauderdale and Broward County on the map as an international destination to view and interact with art, to give all these artists that we were establishing relationships with a platform to get highlighted, showcased, discovered, and collected. So we didn't want to do what everybody else does, doing an art fair in a tent, a convention center, or a hotel. We figured we have these really cool elements of Fort Lauderdale, intercoastal waterway system, beautiful homes and architecture on the water, and a water taxi. How many places in the world have that? We came up with the first art fair in the world to take place inside of mansions on the water that people only got to on a boat. Doesn't exist. It's called Art Fort Lauderdale, the art fair on the water. We ran it for 4 years, up until COVID, understandably. We exhibited over 500 artists, 1,000 pieces of artwork over 4 years. It changed so many people's lives. People met their partners, their spouse, people got jobs, people got collected, people designed lobbies of condo buildings from just being at this and meeting people. It was an absolutely beautiful thing. And then COVID happened. Right before COVID happened, we were doing art. This was in houses that were for sale. So we got involved with the real estate board, and being involved with the real estate board had developers and commercial property people say, hey, can you do art in our space? And they would always be like, oh yeah, by the way, we're not gonna pay you for it. So my business partner had been a marketing director for Westfield, the Broward Mall. He had taken underutilized portions of the mall, like in the food court, and would make commission-free art galleries for artists. And we were leaving a meeting one day, we saw all these for lease signs, we were hearing all this news about Broward County is unfortunately one of the least affordable counties for housing. We turned to ourselves and we said, what if we can make this one of the most affordable places for artists to be able to create in? We figured, why don't we try to activate some of these vacant spaces? We reach out to Mayor Dean Trantellis, who's a friend and supporter of the arts, and we say, hey, Dean, can you hook us up with a property owner? He goes, why don't you reach out to Mike Weymouth, the owner of Las Olas Company, who I always heard was a tough cookie. He is a tough cookie. It took him 3 seconds, and he said, I'll give you space on Las Olas in 2019. There was 19 vacancies on Las Olas. It was $86 a square foot. This space would have been $30,000 enough to rent. No artist is going to rent it. We go in there. We have one of the largest, widest attended grand openings of anything ever in Fort Lauderdale and Las Olas. 1,000 people in the streets. We've got a ton of press, and it was massively successful. Changed all of those artists' lives. Artists were selling $40,000 worth of artwork. It never would have happened anywhere else like that. Long story short, we're activating the space until a permanent lease gets signed. We're in there for 3 months. Guy comes in, says, I'd like the buzz and energy in the space. If the doors were closed, there's no buzz and energy. Can I get the landlord's number? That's part of the program. He signs a permanent lease on the space. The goal is then we get moved to the next available space. And thankfully Mike moved us to the former Levinson Jeweler space, 888 East Las Olas, which was vacant for 5 years from when the guy committed suicide after the Scott Rothstein thing. We're in there for 3 months, an even bigger space, $50,000 a month that would have been to rent it. Guy comes in, I like the buzz and energy in the space. We're in there just filling the blanks, filling the gaps. Signs a permanent lease, program is proven, and we've since opened 28 affordable working artist studio spaces in 4 years. We're now in 3 states. We've had 400 artists come through the program. It has undoubtedly changed hundreds of artists' lives, thousands of times over. We put emerging, mid-career, and established artists in a space together where most of these spaces are heavily juried. You have to have a long CV, you have to have a master's in fine art. We'll put a beginning artist with a grandma who's been painting at home for 30 years, never stepped outside her house with her art. She was making her family, she was painting in the 3rd, 4th, 5th bedroom. Her spouse, her family member, whoever sees an article in the newspaper, she goes, hey honey, you should try this. The most rewarding and fulfilling thing is when a grandma says to you, I never called myself an artist because I never stepped out of my house with my art. And now they're in a space with 20 other artists who are their contemporaries, peers, and the most beautiful thing on top of that, we're putting people from all different walks of life, black, white, gay, straight, trans, orange, purple, everybody else in between, in a space. It has been the most rewarding and fulfilling thing that I've ever been fortunate enough to be a part of, and that's called Zero Empty Spaces. And all these things, in short, really happened as a result of making a couple critical choices. To choose TED Talks and motivation, to choose going to Wynwood and exploring the arts, to choose blogging. And I made a crucial choice, thanks to our dear friend Chloe here. I also started a nonprofit. Some artists came to me, they go, I have this idea, I want to put sculptures in the ocean and call them artificial reefs. I had no idea what that meant. And they wanted to make them mermaids. And they wanted to do 1,000 of them. All they wanted to do was make the art. Somebody had to do the nonprofit, somebody had to do marketing. I don't want to manage artists. They showed me a documentary called Chasing Coral. Has anybody heard of that on Netflix? The people that made Seaspiracy made it. It was my aha moment. It really woke me up and opened my eyes. I said, these corals don't have a voice. There really aren't that many people advocating for the corals, and I like using the power of art as a problem solver. We use the art to solve the real estate problem. We can use the art to raise awareness about the issues plaguing our reefs and potentially saving our reefs and our oceans and our planet. No reef, no fish. So doing this reef project took a couple years to get off the ground. We found one of the most altruistic, generous concrete patent wizards, landscape architect, architectural ornament wizard who had a facility. He funded the first $2.5 million of the project to help us get it off the ground and put 100 reefs in the ocean off the coast of Palm Beach. And now we have some in Hollywood as well. And long story short, obviously you can see, got involved in a few ventures. I also started hosting this monthly breakfast lecture series that changed my life. Now we call it CreativeZen, to continue paying it back, paying it forward. So I was spreading myself very thin, and I was dealing with burnout. And this is really, when COVID happened, I really realized I also got diagnosed with diabetes at this time. So I knew I needed to start taking my health more seriously. A lot of people were saying, oh, I'm gonna come out of COVID a better person than when I came into it. I had like made a couple attempts with like the workout bands on my balcony, but wasn't really happening. And I'm in Tulum in November of 2020 with my nonprofit, working on some reef projects. I'm with my partner who's 10 years younger than me. I was 35 at the time, she was 25, PhD, brilliant, next Sylvia Earle, next Jane Goodall for the reefs. And we're catching the sunrise, we're flying the drone, we're doing time lapse like we're doing here. And we finish all that. She goes up to explore the ruins. Her friend, who I had just met, a guy, God bless him, we're hanging out on the beach, turns to me, all he said was, you want to do some yoga? And I had made a couple attempts, but it wasn't really for me. And I just looked at him, I said, sure. He was not a teacher, he was just a practitioner. We did a couple down dogs, we did a couple sun salutations, just a little flow on the beach. The portal opened right in front of me, and I stepped in. I had just moved into a beautiful brand new building in downtown Fort Lauderdale called Society Las Olas, and somehow the universe placed Chloe in this space on a 25th floor, 180-degree wraparound view with green carpet, green astroturf, to offer free classes. What initially I saw once a week. The way the story goes, I had just met a girl in this building, and I saw she was going to yoga, and I send Chloe a DM from Tulum. I say, hey Chloe, could you put in a good word for me with this girl? And all Chloe said, come to yoga.
Yeah.
Absolutely changed my life forever. Unfortunately, the girl evaporated. Chloe was stuck. One class, I found out she was offering a second class a week. Then I found out she was offering sound bowls for free in my building. I just took a little ride up the elevator. Amazing. Fortunately, I made another great choice to start working with Chloe one-on-one with coaching. And Chloe, God bless her, as I've alluded to, helped me develop my daily morning routine, which I am very proud and glad to share with you. I start off with a brief moment of gratitude, just waking up, I immediately turn on affirmations. And I try to turn on a different one every single day. I am healthy, I am whole, I am wise, I'm alive. I then transition, as I'm having my breakfast, to motivational talks. Les Brown's, Jim Rome's, Gary Vee. Do any of you guys know David Goggins? I think I mentioned him to you. All this just positivity just pumping in my ears every single day. And then I meditate. And then I do my morning flow, just a 10 or 15 minute, couple down dogs, sun salutations. Now I do it in the sauna, because I have sauna in my building to give me an extra little heat. Then I do a cold shower, and my day is set. And that is a ritual that I'm forever grateful for Chloe educating me and enlightening me and showing me this path of ways to feel better, because you can't pour from an empty cup, obviously, and you need to, especially if you have diabetes, to be your best, you have to feel your best so you can do your best. And the last choice that I'll mention, and the rest of these choices are in the book that I'm about to release, called Learning to Choose, because I started with Choose 954, and I made a series of critical choices. The best choice, which I think is a good recommendation to help you guys integrate your life, is something I do with, it's a conscious men's group. There's women's groups as well, there's mixed groups, there's parents groups, but this group work, are you guys familiar with just like a weekly meeting of the minds. God bless, I fortunately connected with a holistic dentist that was a yogi, is a yogi, and he was doing this online during COVID, but he really wanted to bring it in person because it's obviously a lot different to have that face-to-face human interaction and connection, which I yearn for and love. It's what fills my cup and my soul. And we had just moved in together. We made a decision, made a great choice to move in with this brilliant man, Seth Gilson, aka the Mindful Doctor, one of the most generous, altruistic, kind, considerate doctors you'll ever meet. You ask him any question, he'll give you the honest, researched, trusted answer. The most valuable gift I never knew I was going to receive. And he's thankfully him and another man that was doing the work online started this Conscious Men's group. And we meet once a week in our apartment, thankfully. We start with Wim Hof breathing. We have a round of gratitude where we just share what we're grateful for, what came up for us. We do weekly check-ins for 3 minutes where we just, not like this happened on Monday, this happened on Tuesday, like what's present for us that week. We have a little bit more time to open share. And then there's some really great like programming and discussion points. Mother shares, where we share our experience with our mothers. Father shares, so many things in between there. And I couldn't advocate anything more for self-care routines in the mindfulness practice of meditation, mindfulness, group work, however you can find it, whatever works for you. My routine might not be your routine, but it's had a profound impact on my life. I've now become a mental health, yoga, mindfulness advocate, working with these beautiful young ladies here at Rise in Nature Retreats. And I really want to share these gifts to inspire others, because as you've now seen, this is my oxygen. I was a regular guy. I was a Johnny 9-to-5 recruiter sitting at a desk, and I could have sat at that desk, and there's nothing wrong with sitting at that desk for the rest of your life. But some people know that they're destined for more. When the vice principal would tell my parents, Evan's a great kid, he's gonna do great things, just can't figure it out. The school path wasn't for me, and I tell people, especially people that have kids, you know, in all reality, school's not for everybody. I didn't know I was gonna be an entrepreneur. I knew in my mind that I wanted to do bigger things. I knew I wanted to make a bigger impact. But for those that maybe your kid gets in a little trouble, speaks out, whatever the case may be, just know there's a potentially different path for your kid. And I really hope that this book and this story and my journey can help inspire one person, their kid, their friend's kid, some kid they mentor, because this legit, I don't care if I sell 1 book, 100 books, no books. I truly love connecting, engaging, and inspiring other people to change their lives. Because if it can happen for me as a regular guy, it can happen to anybody. And that's really it. And I truly, as you can see in closing, would not be here. Obviously, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Chloe. I mean, I am beyond forever grateful. I knew a lot of people, unfortunately, that died before I got out of high school. Drug overdoses, car accidents. In the beginning of COVID, I had 2 of the people that I admired the most in the world in 24 hours back to back tell me they were considering suicide. Thankfully they didn't. Thankfully I was there for them. Mental health impacts people differently. Everybody's fighting a journey and a battle that we know nothing about internally. I always preach to be kind, always, and just be compassionate, be genuine, be authentic, pursue your passions. You could become a librarian. You can do whatever you want to do. I never would have imagined that I'd be taking empty spaces in a former Burberry store in Natick, Massachusetts, next to a Louis Vuitton, and put artists, when I was covering them with my cell phone, just wanting to show the people I grew up with what was happening in the community where they were from, that I would be here in Greece, sharing with you guys. So thank you very much for listening.
Awesome, Snow.
Yeah.
Awesome!
My pleasure.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
When and where can we buy your book?
It's coming out July 14th. I have the pre-order available.